mind a full 2-hour meal break either, will you? Okay. Our next speaker is one whom I'm sure is known to all of you, or should be, from the book she has written, beginning with End to the Fringe, and then with Taken, and most recently with Masquerade of Angels. And, of course, all those are available out there. Her title today is The UFO Masquerade. She has spoken here before. We're always very, very pleased to have her back, since she's now in Arkansas especially. Let me present to you one more time, Dr. Karla Turner.
Thank you. Can anybody see me out there? I need a Coke carton, somebody to stand on here. All right, how about sound? Are we okay on that? Well, before we get started, and someday my eyes will actually get used to this and I can see who you are out there, I just want to mention something. I haven't been able to sit in on many of the presentations so far because I've been working out front. And I don't know if anybody has made a big to-do yet over the fact that this is the 7th Ozark UFO Conference. Has everybody already celebrated that and I missed it? Well, this is the 6th one that my husband and I have been to, and I really want to thank Lou Farish for one more excellent weekend, if I survive it, that is. And, Lou really makes it feel very natural and effortless and so easy to be here, but I think Lou would agree with me that that's probably an illusion. I think it takes hours and hours and weeks of work on his part for us to come here like we do every year and listen and share and catch up with all our old friends and, for me at least, meet a lot of new ones. And all the while, we're getting, so much of the recent information in this field from some of the most committed researchers and reporters and investigators out here. Although maybe I shouldn't say committed. Maybe I should say dedicated instead. I don't think any of them have been committed lately, and let's just hope it stays that way. I'll tell you, though, with all the apprehensions, I hate to get serious on Saturday morning, but with all the apprehensions I have heard voiced in the UFO community and other communities over the past year about all the escalating social and political and scientific and religious repression and suspicion and polarization, and even fears of some new incarnation of totalitarianism, though, you sort of have to wonder just how long we're all going to be able to continue to do what we're doing this weekend and to research and report and educate ourselves and others about the real nature of this phenomenon. So let's all take advantage of it while we have the opportunity here. Many of us attend a number of these conferences, and I think we read a lot of the relevant books in the magazines and journals, and we have a great network of friends and connections all over the country, all over the world, in fact, with whom we share information. And I just want to say, no matter what our differing views may be about the ultimate nature of this phenomenon, I think we all must agree we're living in a very exciting world and a very exciting time. We all feel this. The more involved we are in the field, the more deeply we feel this. But the truth is that the rest of the world isn't watching what we're doing. I would remind us all that the UFO community is very small. It's very isolated from mainstream society in a certain way, although we're all out there right in the middle of things individually. And the things that we take for granted, most of society takes for science fiction, or fantasy, or hoax. And they pay very little conscious attention to us. Now, the reality of this phenomenon is not part of their perceptions for the most part, and until it is, I feel that we have a strong obligation to try to do something about that. As an abductee in a family of abductees, I know that it's real, what we're dealing with. As a researcher and a reporter about other people's experiences, I know that it is widespread, and that more and more people every day are becoming aware of just how real and pervasive and globally important this agenda of improbable contact and intrusion must surely be. I think the nature of this phenomenon admonishes all of us to become researchers and reporters, and most of all, educators. The whole world should be watching and listening, don't you think? And we need to do it. That's our job. But instead, right now, as we're meeting here and delving into so many different aspects of this field, most of our friends, our families, Our co-workers remain in that blissful state of unawareness. So we all have a job to do. But that's not to say that no one out there is listening and watching, however. And one of the things I want to discuss here is the information about those folks who are paying attention to us, our own government, which we will get to a little bit later. I'm going to be very limiting on the topics I discuss here because I could talk the rest of the day on the two books and the information that I've been fortunate enough to learn from the people with whom I've been doing this research. And I'm not going to do that to you. It's Saturday. If you were partying last night like I am, the sooner we get to the cartoon and get out of here, I think the more rested we'll be for the things coming up the rest of the day. And there's some extremely important talks going to be going on later. But I'm going to limit my talks today to just a few topics that I feel are crucial. And these include the use of illusion and deception in the UFO and abduction scenarios, and also the nature of some of the physical procedures which abductees report experiencing during these encounters. Since 1992, when my family's personal account was published in Into the Fringe, I've been engaged in two fairly lengthy investigations. And the results of this work we recently published in the books Taken, Inside the Alien Human Abduction Agenda, and Masquerade of Angels. And although Taken was published first, I'd actually been working with Ted Rice and Barbara Bartholick on the research that led to Masquerade quite a while before the work in Taken. So I'm going to refer to Masquerade's material first this morning. And then I'm going to look briefly at the reports of the 8 women who contributed their accounts to the material in Taken. And as I do so, I just want to point out again several important correlations to some of the things in the material from the women in Taken that had already turned up in the work that Barbara and I were doing with Ted Rice. So both of these discussions will be brief, and I will take the final half hour or so of my allotted time for a video presentation of some of the many drawings and photos and a video excerpt that from women involved in the Taken project that I was unable to include in the book. That's one of the things I really wish we could have done, was to include a number of these illustrations. So I'm going to do that today to try to make up for what we were not able to do in the book. In 1991, when I first met Ted Rice, I was naturally intrigued by his memory of a mass abduction experience in Shreveport, Louisiana. But I had no idea that looking into his report would lead me into areas that I'd never had to deal with before in this field. Accounts of angels and apparitions, of bargains made with ghostly guardians, of spiritualist philosophy and psychic work assisted by spirit guides. I mean, all of this was part of Ted's extraordinary experiences, but it was not anything in my field of expertise, believe me. But in listening to Ted's accounts, I began to see evidence that was more familiar to me, thank God, evidence that was very consistent with UFO sightings and abduction reports that I'd already come to know about. And since Ted had recalled an abduction involving a number of people, I wanted to see, first off, if there were any confirming evidence that we could locate. And as we proceeded, Barbara and I, with interviews of many of the people from Ted's past, as well as his more recent experiences in the present, we did find that such evidence actually was available and surfacing in consciously recalled events attested to by a number of witnesses. In fact, 4 of Ted's neighbors described unusual events, also consciously remembered, from the night of the mass abduction that Ted had remembered in 1989. Now, 2 of these witnesses were so disturbed by their memories of these events that the fear level was so high they wouldn't even let us include their accounts in the book. They shared them with us privately. So I would point out one thing for those of you who are not involved in direct investigation and working with abductees, that contrary to all the debunkers' claims that abductees and UFO witnesses tell their story for some personal gain, it's actually very difficult for those involved to risk coming forward with their accounts. And I would say for 99% of those who do make their experiences public, the resulting liabilities often outweigh the assets that they may gain from doing so. After thoroughly interviewing Ted about his conscious memories, we both felt that there were important gaps in several of these events that were worth investigating with hypnotic regression. And I'm not going to take time here today to argue the merits and the problems of regression work, but I will say that, in my experience, it's proven to be a very useful and manageable tool of research, and that without it, I think we would be left to deal only with alien-controlled information, which abductees are sent home with after their experiences. Now, it's important to note that at the time Ted began his work with Barbara and with me, he had been involved for most of his adult life in spiritualist work. An extraordinary series of encounters that he had in Sun Valley, Idaho, with a mysterious woman, beautiful and young, who called herself Maya, first introduced Ted to metaphysical matters and also made him aware of his own psychic abilities. I would remind you that Maya is the Hindu term for illusion, by the way, and that Maya also turns up in a number of other people's experiences, often in the guise of some Pleiadian star being. Ted, at the time of meeting his Maya, had no thoughts on these lines, no information about such things, and certainly took her simply to be the very mysterious, beautiful woman that he experienced. In the account in Maquerade of Angels, however, you will find that there was more mystery to Maya's presence there in Sun Valley than Ted had any idea of at the time he was engaged with her. Still, coming face to face with his own abilities through some of these encounters and time spent with Maya, Ted was very reluctant to pursue these ideas or this ability he apparently had. And it was several years later before circumstances propelled him into psychic training and his involvement with the spiritualist church. And when he did make the commitment to go forward with this work, Ted went forward full tilt. In fact, he was a co-founder of the church's first congregation in Georgia. And he began doing psychic readings, which he is still doing today. Ted was convinced that the metaphysical understanding he had found was of God, and that his work served God's higher purposes, as revealed to Ted by his spirit guides from the other side. But intermixed with Ted's paranormal events and psychic work were some startling encounters with apparently non-human entities, including, in 1989, of course, the abduction along with some of his neighbors. And at that point, Ted discovered that perhaps a different force had been intruding into his life for a number of years. And this was a force that his spirit guides had never bothered to mention, explain, and that his spiritualist training did not delve into either. So Ted needed some new information, and this led to our contact and investigation. And as it progressed, it became clear that the research into all of these extraordinary experiences could take several years. But after the first 2 years, we felt that the information we had gathered was important enough to communicate it as soon as possible, albeit going on with the research, and we're continuing to do that to this point right now. We stopped and did the material organization that resulted in Maquerade, which was published in 1994. And we have full intentions of following up this report with everything else that Barbara and I will actually get used to this, and I can see who you are out there. I just want to mention something. I haven't been able to sit in on many of the presentations so far because I've been working out front. And I don't know if anybody has made a big to-do yet over the fact that this is the 7th Ozark UFO Conference. Has everybody already celebrated that and I missed it? Well, this is the 6th one that my husband and I have been to, and I really want to thank Lou Farish for one more excellent weekend, if I survive it, that is. And,
let me present to you one more time Dr. Karla Turner.
Can anybody see me out there? I need a Coke carton, somebody to stand on here. All right, how about sound? Are we okay on that? Well, before we get started, someday committed. Maybe I should say dedicated instead. I don't think any of them have been committed lately, and let's just hope it stays that way. I'll tell you, though, with all the apprehensions, I hate to get serious on Saturday morning, but with all the apprehensions I have heard voiced in the UFO community and other communities over the past year about all the escalating social and political and scientific and religious repression.
Don't mind a full 2-hour meal break either, will you? Okay. Our next speaker is one whom I'm sure is known to all of you, or should be, from the book she has written, beginning with End of the Fringe, and then with Taken, and most recently with Masquerade of Angels. And, of course, all those are available out there. Her title today is The UFO Masquerade. She has spoken here before. We're always very, very pleased to have her back since she's now in Arkansas, especially.
Lou really makes it feel very natural and effortless and so easy to be here, but I think Lou would agree with me that that's probably an illusion. I think it takes hours and hours and weeks of work on his part for us to come here like we do every year and listen and share and catch up with all our old friends, and for me at least meet a lot of new ones. And all the while we're getting, so much of the recent information in this field from some of the most committed researchers and reporters and investigators out here. Although maybe I shouldn't say